Let's push up the volume. Let's push up the volume. All right. I'll be reading from this one tonight, but I found this book. I'll be reading from this the week after next. So I'll do this for a couple of days now and into next week. They have these displays in the library here in Queens, the Central Library. Every borough has a central big library, and I got this off the display. So we'll deal with that. But that's 2 weeks. We're gonna get into this right now. The deficit myth. Stephanie Kelton. And I'm gonna be reading from the last chapter, or chapter 8, building an economy for the people. Because that's basically what you need. If you want the society to be stable, if you want it to continue to be destabilized, chaotic, if you want to descend deep and deep into a chaotic dystopia, because there's different kinds of dystopia. There's organized dystopian societies, and then there's chaotic ones where there's just like, I want to say it's not really Mad Max, but maybe like Purge, maybe like what are some of the other? Oh my gosh, I can't remember this one. They just did a sequel to it like 30 years later, but there was a sci-fi one where the robots were human. They thought they were human, but it could be like the Purge. It could become like the Hunger Games, or it could be an organized one like Minority Report, or is it Gattaca was very organized one. So you have different kinds of dystopian societies. But if you're gonna need, because everything seems to be built around economy, which I think is insane in of itself. Human beings have so much before you get to economics. But this is what everybody believes in. This is what everybody thinks is the center. So let's see what they're saying about building an economy for the people. It was summer 2010 when Warren Mosler, who we first met in chapter 1, traveled to Kansas City, Missouri to join me for a meeting with Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. Cleaver was a United Methodist pastor and the first African American mayor of Kansas City. In 2004, he was elected to represent Missouri's 5th congressional district, a western central part of the state that included the University of Missouri-Kansas, UMKC, where I have been teaching. Cleaver agreed to meet with us as a favor to a mutual friend, a local politician, who happened to be working on a PhD at my university. I'll never forget the meeting. The Great Recession 2007 to 2009 was technically over, but the economy was still in shambles, mostly for black people. That Obama's policies destroyed so many black families because most of your wealth comes through your home, and so many black people lost their homes. Almost 10% of the labor force was without work, and the African American youth aged 16 to 19, unemployment rate was nearly 50%. As Mosley and I saw it, the $787 billion stimulus package passed by Congress in February 2009 hadn't done nearly enough to end the foreclosure crisis and put millions of people back to work. And that stimulus package gave nothing to the people. Obama's stimulus package gave nothing to the people. Trump's stimulus package gave people stimulus. I benefited from Trump's stimulus package. I did. I'm not going to vote for him. I didn't vote for him then, but I'm telling you, I benefited from it. everyone I know benefited from that package in a very real way. And you think he's not going to win the election? You're insane. And trying to shame people into because he's crass or racist. Joe Biden's name is Jim Crow Joe. He's a segregationist. it's crazy. Mosler believed the Congress could essentially fix things in 3 easy steps. First, he wanted a federally funded job guarantee to make sure that every unemployed worker could immediately transition back into paid employment. I'll tell you why that's no good. Second, he called for a payroll tax holiday that would have temporarily reduced the withholding of Social Security payroll taxes from 6.2% to 0. This would have been tantamount to a 6.2% pay raise for about 150 million Americans. These are not his policies. They're not coming from his head. No preacher is doing this. This is some neoliberal advisor. It sounds like Clinton type people. For self-employed workers who pay both the employer and employee side of the withholding, it would have meant a 12.4% increase in take-home pay. At a time when the consumer spending was weak, it would have improved the bottom line for millions of companies as well. Finally, Mosler recognized the profound strain on the Great Recession had on state and local government budgets. To help these currency-using governments weather the sharp decline in tax revenues, he proposed $500 billion in aid, distributed on a per capita basis to all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. island territories. That would have protected tens of thousands of teachers, firefighters, police, and other public sector workers whose jobs were on the line as state revenues dried up. They should have gave us a UBI back then. But I'm going to tell you why these policies are no good. First of all, you can tell that means tested when they start talking about 6.2% and 14% and this percent. They're nibbling away. Biden helped 2% of the student loan, people who owe student loans. He forgave the debt on 2% of them here. And that's how many people you're going to get voting for you. You're going to get that 2% you helped over here, and that 3% you helped over there, and that 7% you helped over there, and you're going to end up with like 30% of the vote. You can get your ass kicked. But let's go to the first thing. Job guarantees, we're past that. Now, maybe when this book was written, we weren't. Let me see when this book was written. Let me see the date. So I won't blame him if this book was written. But we was kind of past that anyway. Oh, this book was written 2020. Oh, we was definitely past that 2020. Yeah, we was definitely past this. So we have so technologically advanced, the job guarantee thing is no good. Plus, anyone who ties their self-esteem to their job has a problem. Unless you're like a surgeon and you're saving lives, or I could even say if you're an artist and you're creating music, or even if you're an athlete, I could see it, a world-class athlete. But if you're going to sit in an office somewhere and you're tying your esteem to that, if you're doing a service job and you tie your esteem to that, you don't tie your esteem to your job. Your esteem should be about your character and the relationships you can keep going and manage. And not just manage, but the connections you can keep. Your character, your esteem should be built on your character. What are you doing? Are you just? Are you empathetic? Are you thoughtful? That's where your esteem should come from, not your job. So that's another thing. Helping unemployed and employed. The unemployment number hasn't been real for decades. Because if you're still unemployed when your unemployment runs out, you drop off the unemployment line so you don't get counted. People who forget, you always hear people who stop looking for work, they don't count. If you work part-time and you get fired, you don't count. If you work under a certain amount of hours. I never realized that. My ex-wife had to tell me that, yeah, if you work under a certain amount of hours, you don't count. So if you're working 15 hours at this restaurant and 10 hours at that restaurant and 10 hours somewhere else, and they fire you, you don't count for unemployment because you're working less than, I think it's 30 hours at each place, or less than 25 hours at each place. It's something like that. I'm not sure the amount of hours, but if you're under a certain amount of hours, when you get fired, it doesn't count as unemployment, right? You don't have the unemployment benefits. I'm trying to think of what. So the unemployment rate is not real. What you should have, if you want to count employment, you should have an employment rate. But no politician will ever do that, because then it would show that almost such a small number of people are employed 40 hours a week. That should be, we should have an employment rate, not an unemployment rate. Anybody who's not employed 40 hours is either underemployed or unemployed. Okay. Then you'd see the number of quote unquote unemployed rise. And these days, even if you're employed 40 hours a week, you're not getting, some states have a $15 minimum wage. Like New York State has a $15 minimum wage. I think it went up to 16 or 17. But to live in New York, you need to be making, I think they said somewhere it's $27 an hour to actually make it. So even if you have a full-time job and you're making the minimum wage, even if you're making $20 an hour, it's not enough. So, and a lot of states are like that. Different states have different, the federal minimum wage is $7.50. Some states still have $7.50. South Carolina still has $7.50. I think all the right to work states. And you don't get an hour lunch, you get a half hour lunch. So that stuff won't work. Doing taxes and payroll taxes, that stuff is lame. I'm going to tell you, in 2020, we had the child tax credit, which was $300 a month per child. People were getting $300 each month. So I don't know why they called it the child tax credit, because it was a stimulus. That's what it should have been called. You see, in 2020, they were giving us UBI without calling it that. They were trying to call it different things so we wouldn't get used to it. But the little bit, we got 4 UBI checks for $1,400 a piece. Well, then I think we got a $600 one, and then the next year Biden gave us a $1,400 because Nancy Pelosi held up the check so that Trump would lose, and then we get it through Biden. We're gonna read the rest of this. On Sunday. So we were getting a UBI. You were getting unemployment if you did gig work. I was getting unemployment. They put $300 on top of whatever unemployment you were getting. So I was homeless at that point, and I was using Airbnb and living off the stimulus. So like so many people were doing, we were getting UBIs. We got the $1,400 one every quarter, so we got 4 of those. And I can't prove this, but I think that was the plan going forward. I think that was supposed to be the plan going forward. We were either supposed to keep getting money and keep getting money for the children. Children got raised out of poverty for the first time in decades in 2020 from those $300 checks. The Democrats Biden stopped the checks. He let it expire. Plunged 40% more children back into poverty. Then there was a lot of fighting and saying, how could you let people go? How could you sit here? And he was taking credit for things he's done. And people were saying Joe Biden did this, Joe Biden did that. And it's like, no, he let children go into poverty. So finally, he brought it back, but now he brought it back as a tax credit where you have to get it at the when you file for your taxes in April, which means you may not get the money till June, right? People using that $300 every month to do things with, buy food, keep the clothes clean, maybe pay some light bills or something like that. Money was being put into circulation. When you gotta wait all the way until June, now you're probably in a hole in a debt. You take that money, you're probably paying off a credit card bill or something like that. So it gets swallowed. I guess the credit card is spending. So I mean, I guess you're still kind of spending, but you're going deeper and deeper into a debt. That's why it looks like you're getting something, but you're not. Plus, he reduced it from 3,000 and change to 2,000 and change. So it wasn't $300 a month. Just give us a $1,400 universal basic income and be done with it. And if you give us a $2,000 a month universal basic income, you could do away with the whole welfare system. You could do away with it. You don't need it. And I know you can do this because in New York City, the migrants all got $1,000 a month food cards on their cards. It's a debit card. Supposedly they can only spend this on food, but it's a cash card. So I doubt that that's the truth. Plus, when you ring up stuff in bodegas and stores, they can ring it up as produce, or they can ring it up as groceries, and it could be something else. So if they can do that just like that for them, just like that, then they could do it for the citizens. That's the way out. So that would be a good economics for the people. Give us a UBI. I would give black people who Lincoln promised money that we never got. I would give them a little more. So if the UBI was 1,400, I would give black people who can tie themselves to sharecroppers, which is what Lincoln was dealing with. Then give them 2,000, or give us 2,000, because my grandfather's from Mississippi. M.I. crooked letter I, crooked letter I, humpback I, and he was a sharecropper. And I'm pretty sure his father or grandfather was a slave. I mean, I'm pretty sure of it. So or grandmother or one of the sides, I'm sure was a slave. So that's what you do, and that would be a true economy for the people. And it's coming. It's actually coming, unless the political class and the ruling class are just finished and don't care about society anymore and just gonna lock themselves behind the walls. I don't see how they're gonna keep the rest of us out. But maybe this is what they're going to try. But if they're not going to try that, then you're going to give us a UBI. Quickly, because this video is going way too long. If they do that, wherever you're living, you would own it. Because if the ruling class is sitting behind walls, how are they going to collect rent from you? I mean, they could use intermediaries and police and those kinds of things, but I doubt very seriously. But then again, you never know. These people might continue to work for them. If they can keep us divided enough. But I mean, that would be a real big risk for the ruling class. I don't see them being able to monitor things and to evict us and to do all those things if they're living behind a wall. Right, but we'll see what happens, because it's we're at a crossroads. We've been at a crossroads. We've actually taken the wrong turn. So let's see if we can come back to 2020, reset the great reset, and go down the right path. UBIs, and then anybody who wants to work more, if there are places and spots for them, they can do it. Remember, it's going to be a rough summer. Try to take care of yourself. Try to be safe. It's going to be so rough that New York has legalized tasers and pepper spray, as long as you're not using it in a crime, as long as you're using it in self-defense. So I know it's going to be rough. Be safe and take care. Hit the links to support, and see you in the next video.